Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Chasing Dreams podcast with Charlie and Justin. We are on episode 73, and we're coming to you on a somewhat chilly Saturday morning, at
Yeah,
least chillier than what it has been
right.
lately.
Yep. The last few days was really nice, though, man.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love when it gets warm. And, with this time of the year, you never really know because we have temperature fluctuations,
Right.
and it could be like last week,
Yeah.
it was, 70, and then it snowed, and then it went right back to 70. So in Ohio in the springtime, you never know what you're going to get.
Yeah, and I woke up the next morning after, 70, 25, and then 70. I woke up that second 70-degree morning and was plugged up. My allergies, or I don't know if it's allergies or like sinus pressure, because I've never had allergy issues, like
Hmm.
ever. It was like an ongoing joke as a kid when you go to the doctor and they say you're allergic to anything. Grass was the only thing I was ever allergic to. Like freshly cut grass, I would get
Yeah.
whatever, a little sniffle, but other than that, nothing.
Hmm.
But now, like I'm 31 and I'm like, okay, am I allergic to stuff now? What's going on?
Well, I don't. This sounds weird, and I wish that I had some physiology to back this up, or at least a little bit of knowledge about it. But it seems like you can grow in and out of sensitivities and allergens.
Yes.
Like I know people. My mom, for example, growing up was like very, very hyper allergic to cats. So whenever she would be around cats, it would like she would like break out and get insanely itchy, and it was like really, really high degree of sensitivity. Like if she could barely even go in a house with cats,
Wow.
let alone like touching them and stuff. But then flash forward, several years to when I was in college and I got cats, and um, when I moved for a job, I had an apartment that didn't allow pets. So my parents said that they would take the cats. And I said that might be obviously difficult with mom, but she told me that she hasn't been bad, over the past decade or so with them. And she has the cats at their place now, and she's not too bad with them. I mean, every
Right.
now and then she'll have like slight flare ups, but I don't know how it works. Like I said, I wish I had some physiology or some knowledge with that to back it up, but it seems like you can grow in and out of the sensitivities.
Yeah, that's something that I've been noticing too. But yeah, just allergies in general this year have got me my like sinus drainage and fuzzy eyes, not fuzzy but like scratchy.
Hmm.
But yeah, so this week was kind of miserable.
Yeah, I feel you on the mucus thing and like the sinuses. For me, I've always had that issue. Typically, it happens. I think it's due to pressure, like when the weather changes, when it
Yeah.
goes from warm to cold and cold to warm, because it happens twice a year. And I always get like a lot of phlegm and mucus buildup, which is disgusting, but
Yeah.
I can't really, control it. And nothing over the counter has worked. Like I'm never one to really ever take anything over the counter. I mean, I never even take Advil, but when I there are some times where I needed like some type of intervention. And I remember I went to an ear, nose, and throat doctor um, for something completely unrelated. And this was during a period that like I didn't have any buildup or any mucus. And they did this scan where they had to take this camera. It's on a long, like it almost looks like a snake, and it's a camera at the end of it. And what they do is they kind of like lube it up. They stick it up your nose, so it goes up your nose and down your throat, and it's not comfortable, as
No,
you would imagine.
I can imagine.
So he puts it in there, and he's like, raving about the amount of mucus and phlegm that I have in the back of my throat and everything, and in my nose. And I said, "Man," I said, "this is a good period for me." I said, "I don't even really notice it." I said, "I want to know what the heck's going on when I have like, I don't know if you'd call it a flare up or like a bad period or whatever."
Right, right.
I think, I was talking to somebody the other day about how when with allergies that I don't think people pay close enough attention to food sensitivities and food allergies. Like there's minor things because people think, at least in the discussions I've had with people, especially like newer clients when we talk about sensitivities to food, they think oftentimes that if they're not like in full blown like hives, that they don't have an allergic reaction.
Right.
Whereas an allergic reaction could be something as simple as mucus production. Like if you have like a little bit of phlegm in your throat when like so people that happens with dairy for a lot of people,
Right.
but it's kind of assumed and accepted that like dairy will just give you that. But yeah, that shouldn't be the case.
No, you should
That
be.
that's a little bit of an allergic reaction. or if you have a little bit of bloating post meal, especially if the food volume is kind of low and you feel bloated after only eating a little bit. Again, probably a bad sign. So I think that people need to investigate those, and I know that they do like different tests, um, where they have doctors that specifically test for those things, where they'll like prick you with a certain type of food or potential allergen, and they see if you like flare up. Like
Right.
they do it for like different animals and different grasses and stuff like that. So I think it's just part of the puzzle that people can investigate a little bit further depending on what degree you're at. Not that there's anybody who is below trying to be as perfect or as optimal as possible, but like if you really want to delve into like how food works for your body, that might be something to try to look into.
That'd be cool. I might do that just because of like pure interest.
Yeah, I've been
Like,
interested in that stuff, like even little things like the genetic testing that they have
yeah,
now to see what my body's predisposed to do, because the things that I do with my body, some of them come naturally and some of them don't come naturally. So
right.
like with bodybuilding, like there's aspects of it that I feel like come pretty easily for me and others that don't. And I wonder, if we did a lot of this genetic testing, I'm not sure to what degree its reliability or efficacy is, but like I wonder if people did that more often, they would find things at least physically that they're much better at. Like if they're more prone to like endurance sports or more prone to strength sports or
Right.
whatever, just based on your genetics.
It's crazy how far like sciences came in like figuring out ourself and what we can do.
Well, and then you'll look at it 10 years from now or 20 years from now
Right.
or 30 years from now. And, you know, like I always look at training too. Like you and I talk about like old school training and primitive training. And now the training that we do with our athletes will look so maybe even stupid or silly
Yeah.
compared to what really we should have been doing. Um, but you know, I know this is probably every generation gets caught up in this, but I almost feel like as far as training knowledge goes, we've almost, I don't want to say exhausted our knowledge base, but we're pretty far along with it. I
Right.
don't think that like there's a lot more that there is to discover, and that's probably like unbelievably naive of me to say, but like I just think that with the studies that we have on like muscle tissue, like how muscle tissue is replicated and grown, like I think we pretty much know how to do that.
It's like hard to believe that we could like the sky is the limit.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to believe sometimes that what all the stuff like because we talked about before like training like how you would get knowledge for training in the 70s would be a magazine.
Yeah.
And now it's at the click of a button, like literally 4, 5, 6 times a day. Speaking from myself, I'm searching something on the internet and getting different results, different search results for the same training method. So, I want to when I'm hypersensitive on my bench press, I might search, 3 or 4 different types of bench press or accessory workouts, and I'll come up with 100 different or answers.
Mm-hmm.
And in the 70s, you would get that once a month or once every couple months. And then what's it going to be like 10 years from now?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, are you going to be able to just think it? And you know what I mean? Like,
I think too, part of it that hurts is some people, so within that context, right? They have everything at their disposal. Sometimes, and I will point the finger back at myself for sure with this. Sometimes people, I think, can overshoot where their present level is at for what they need to know.
right.
So, like, if I start bodybuilding, and I kind of, I don't like using that as the example for every podcast, but it's just something that I can like conversate with because I have a good knowledge base on it, and I can make analogies pretty easily or pretty simply. Um, I like if you start bodybuilding, you know, you don't need to look into the nuance of specific carbohydrate timing. Like
Right.
realistically, if you're a complete beginner, you have to understand how to get into the gym and how to work out, how to strength
Right.
train. Like And there's nothing wrong with getting very specific and measured and detailed with how you do things, but I feel like it distracts you from the foundation.
Right, from the
Like
building blocks.
if you're building a house, you have to worry about laying the foundation first. You can't worry about what type of curtains you're going to have in your bathroom.
Right.
Like that's so far ahead. And I feel like maybe even myself, if I would have benefited when I was younger of not trying to figure out, what supplements would work best and when to time my creatine, and I would just go lift heavy things very hard. In fact, I can say that I probably benefited from it compared to now, because when I was in college, now you have to give the asterisks of I was younger,
Right.
so my body was a little bit fresher and less prone to injury, and stuff like that. But I feel like when I was in college, I would, eat a lot, follow a high protein diet, and train really, really hard and really, really heavy. And some of the training that we did fringed on the threshold of stupid
Right.
and reckless, but it worked.
But it worked.
So like I wonder if, sometimes the knowledge base can actually hurt us because of how we talked before about paralysis by analysis. Like people are paralyzed because they overanalyze everything, that like they're so hesitant to get started on a diet because there's so many different diets.
Yeah, I
Like
mean,
we've said before,
you
just
could
pick
use
one
me.
and go.
Yeah, you could use me for an example on that paralysis by analysis every day of the week, because before this journey started, I did that every day.
Well, when we had Austin Stout on, who's my coach, and he was talking about, the whole episode was framed on things that successful people do that are bad.
Right.
So like common traits that he sees, because that's what our podcast is based on. What are the commonalities that we see amongst all successful people? Well, he came on and actually kind of did the opposite. He found out saw and explained some traits of successful people that are usually negatives.
Right.
And one of the things he said was overanalyzing. And he tells me all the time, like he has all these like, sayings and quotes that he puts on his Instagram about overthinking. And he sends them to me all the time. And I know that when he posts them, he's probably got dozens of other clients that fit the mold, but I mean, none probably more perfectly than myself. So, cause I know I've been there. I do that. Like I overthink stuff. And it's weird how you can't separate that from yourself. So like when you started losing weight, the more and more weight you lost, people would come up to you with regularity and say, hey, I want to do what you do. And you can lay it out pretty simplistically and say, this is the step you have to take. This is what you got to do. Like, this is what worked for me. But then when it comes to your own training or your own nutrition, it's constantly like not questioning, but just seeing if there's a better way to do things versus just saying, this is what I'm going to do. Let's go do it.
Right.
And that's the same way.
And I think that's why I've benefited so much from the notebook, that like learning from you with the notebook and sticking to a plan. So I write it down and I put a timeline on it. Like I'm not going to change anything until this time has elapsed. Even if it's negative, even if this is the wrong workout, the wrong plan, I want to make sure it works or make sure it doesn't work.
Well, during the time that you and I started working together, we eventually got to the point, and it wasn't long before we got to the point where you knew what you were doing.
Right.
And then there's still a little bit of time that I think that people should go with someone, because continue down that road for a little bit longer, just because you don't have to think at that point. Like for me, when it comes to like dieting and nutrition and physiology and anatomy, and my coach knows a lot more than I do, because I don't think I'd ever, or anybody would hire someone that doesn't know more than them in a particular area. However, I have the knowledge base, with a pretty extensive client load to be able to do things myself too. But the reason I don't do my own diet is for that reason. It eliminates thinking for me. I don't have to think about, is this best or is that best? I have some ideas and we'll kind of bounce some ideas, but I can also just keep my head down and say, hey dude, you're in the driver's seat. You tell me what to do and it's going to get done.
Yeah.
And that's
exactly.
it,
And I know that too from like experience. Like whenever I started to do my own diet versus when you were doing, like you were in the driver's seat all the time.
It's different. It's different perspective.
And it's tough because you are constantly questioning yourself. Like, is that enough? Is this not enough? Is it, are my calories too high? Are they too low?
Well, and the progress is never going to be perfectly up and down,
Right.
right? It's not going to be perfectly linear. It's going to bounce all over. So when you have a coach and it bounces, your coach, like I can tell you, Justin, trust me, this is normal. And you say, okay.
Yeah.
And then we'll bust through the plateau. Whereas when it's you can't tell yourself to trust yourself.
Right, exactly.
So once if you gain a pound or start going up for a week because of, stress levels or, lack of sleep or lack of hydration or whatever, then all of a sudden you hit the panic button.
Right.
Instead of having somebody logically look at it and say, well, Justin, you're probably up a couple pounds because of these factors this week that were different from
last week
last
month or whatever. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, you just you hit the panic button too fast because there's no one in your ear saying trust me.
Right. I would love to be able to be in my own ear and say trust me. I think that would be cool. But I don't think anybody can. Like you can't especially if you have, and I don't even think I have a large amount of knowledge in any of this. Like it's just all applied stuff that I've learned.
Yeah.
It's not like I've studied it, you know what I mean, extensively. That's where like you and Austin have studied extensively like digestion and how to build muscle, how to lose fat, all that stuff. Like it was like, all right, it's got to happen and start working on it and figure out what works along the way.
Well, and that's part of it too. You have to have that with anything. Like, it's easy to use that example when it comes to like nutrition and training.
Right.
Like nobody wants a personal trainer that doesn't look or live the lifestyle of a personal trainer.
Right.
Like if I'm going to the gym and I'm doing clients' diets and I'm eating McDonald's every day, like maybe my metabolism or, the supplements I'm taking or my training allows me to, for lack of a better phrase, get away with eating fast food every day. I don't, but hypothetically, if I were in that scenario, it probably wouldn't be a good business model for me to bring that to the gym every day and eat McDonald's, because then people are going to start to question and say, well, why can't I do that? Or why is he doing that? Or whatever. So you need to have some like in the trenches experience too, like with everything.
Right.
Like I don't want to take financial advice from someone that doesn't have a lot of money. That's why when you and I started this podcast, we were always pretty adamant about the guests being the beacon of the knowledge. Like the knowledge that we give on this podcast is not coming from you and I.
Right. It's just stuff that we've learned.
Yeah.
Smarter people.
This is us talking.
Yeah.
Like we're not trying to give advice. We're just talking about it. And then when we have guests on, that's where we want people to take advice, because we're not trying to give, a ton of, advices or whatever on being successful, because when it boils down to it, you and I don't really look at ourselves as that. I guess to some people we are, but to several others, probably more others, we're not.
Right,
so
exactly.
It's all about having that in the trenches experience too, to be able to give advice. So I think that learning on the fly and learning as you go and being able to apply it, because like you can read anything in a textbook, but if you don't know how to apply it, it doesn't matter.
Exactly. You have to have that hands-on ability to take what you learn and apply it to life and to any situation, like at all. Like to firefighting, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I took the 36-hour basic firefighter class, and until I started putting that stuff to work, like relearning everything I learned in the book, relearning it practically on a call or in training, it was gibberish, or truck driving for me. You can read about truck driving. You can read about how to control a big truck or slow down going down a big hill with a heavy load on. But until you actually have your foot on the brake and your hand on the shifter, you don't know.
Yeah.
You don't have that and so it's like, that's the problem, I think, with the training and with just society in general now, like as far as like progress in any field or any journey.
Yeah.
Is you have all this knowledge at your fingertips. But and generally, most people, and myself mainly is who I'm talking about, like don't want to wait to see each little piece of knowledge play out and sift through and pick the things that work. I always hear people say, I throw it against the wall and whatever sticks is what I'm going to go with.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you got to throw it against the wall first.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like you can't just say I'm going to throw it against the wall, but I'm just going to pick these things and they're going to stick because that's what I said is going to happen. That doesn't work.
Well, I think there needs to be a little bit of responsibility, if not a lot of responsibility, on people's behalf or on people's parts when sharing this information to kind of annotate it with or preface it by saying, I don't have a lot of experience with this. So I've had this happen, several times at the gym where people would come to me and ask me advice on something, either nutritionally or an exercise or whatever it is. And I give them the nutrition advice or the training advice or have a conversation with them. And then the next day, I'll see that person teaching somebody else about it, which is a good thing because that's why we do this is like I said, I always say that I've never discovered something about the human body. I mean, it's all a conglomeration of the things that I've learned from other people kind of collaborated together to form kind of my own training styles that I believe in or my own nutrition practices that I believe or that I feel work. It's just taking pieces from everybody else. But so I'm big on the knowledge passing, but at the same time, I feel like you can't go directly into something without having tried it for at least an extended period of time,
Like see one, do one, teach one doesn't mean see it today, do it tomorrow, and teach it the next day. It means see it for a while, do it for a while, and then start slowly giving like pointers and advice. This is how I take it.
Yeah.
Because like I use that see one, do one, teach one analogy a lot at work. Like because I train guys in the oil field to do a haul water. Mm-hmm. And
some people skip the do part, it seems like.
Yeah, a lot of people skip the do part. Like you're seeing it when you're in training for 6 weeks.
Uh-huh.
And then you'll get these guys, especially younger than us, and I'm not picking on the millennials, but the 20 somethings, the 21, 22, 23-year-old, men in the oil field, especially. This is just where I'm looking at, like that's the people I'm talking, like the area I'm talking about right now is. So we'll release them from training, and in a week they're walking up to a guy that has a trainee with them and giving the trainee advice, and it's like, bruh, relax.
Yeah.
Like, why don't you just keep absorbing, because you're gonna be a stud if you just keep absorbing all the information you got and then applying it later, because then you're going to be able to have experience and time to back your experience up. And then you can start teaching one.
And then when you do it, people are going to be more willing to listen to you.
Yeah. And it applies like right into the gym, like completely. When I first started working out at the gym, there was a lot of snickers in the room because I was a big guy in work boots because I couldn't wear tennis shoes yet. And after about a year, I was still the biggest guy in the room.
Yeah.
But there were people that were asking me for advice, and I'd never seen that switch was. I never thought that switch would happen, where I would go from the topic of conversation to the guy that was being asked questions about the conversation.
Yeah, still the topic of conversation, but
right.
Not what are you doing? It's how did you do it?
Right, exactly. And it's I guess patience is in this game, in the game of life. I guess patience is a big thing that I'm picking up, and it's something I found from all successful people. They're all patient.
Yeah,
they may not seem like it now. Like when you get to the end of somebody being successful.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to be as patient because they've done that patience part. But like you got to have patience in your journey. Let it work. Do the things. Drive the bad car or work the crappy jobs or whatever. Lose the excess body fat. Whatever it is before you get to the top.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So like I like that. Like somebody told me to be patient a lot lately, and it's smart.
Yeah, paying off mentally.
Yes.
So our listeners are going to have to be patient because we're going to take a commercial break.
There we go.
And then when we come back, we're going to do kind of an episode in reverse where normally we start off with some training updates. Yeah. So we'll kind of track back and kind of get in to see how training's been going for both of us over the past week.
As listeners of the Chasing Dreams podcast, we know that you demand the highest quality at all times. If you're interested in quality, look no further than Beast Mode Baking. Beast Mode Baking aims to bring the highest quality, creative, and of course delicious baked goods to your home with nationwide shipping. All orders need to be pre-ordered to ensure they're packed fresh and shipped out to you as soon as possible. Beast Mode Baking offers a flat rate of $15 for shipping due to the size and weight of the cookies and doughs. So if you're interested in Beast Mode Baking, please contact CEO Shannon Knorr. That's at SKNORR13 on Instagram and order your delicious baked goods today, because every time you support them, you're supporting the podcast as well.
And we're back from our commercial break. So before we went to break, we said how we're kind of doing this in reverse and giving training updates. So how are things going on your end? We didn't touch on it at all at the beginning.
Yeah, no, I actually took pretty much a rest week from the gym because of my sinuses and the head. I didn't know if it was a head cold at first, but I had no fever and there was no cold symptoms other than sinus drainage.
Yeah, and I think we've been pretty adamant of being on the same page about trading when sick. It's probably best just to take your foot off the gas completely and relax.
And in years past, I would have never done that, but with being that I'm training in a public gym again, I just didn't want to subject anybody to anything that I might have.
Yeah.
So I took a couple days, and then it got worse. Not sick feeling, just the draining, just the sinus drainage. So I just told my training partner, hey man, I'm gonna take a week off and just do like some light cardio and stuff. And because I'm still dealing with my hamstring from March of last year, that every time I try to run, it doesn't hurt like bad, but it hurts like what's going on here? So I've been doing, all my cardio has been light, lots of walking and stuff, but other than that, just took a deload this week, basically. It was my birthday, so got to spend some time with family and stuff, so it was pretty cool.
Yeah, always important for the mental side of things more than anything, I think. Like, when I have like a cheat meal, for example, I want to get back on a diet after that.
Yeah.
Like mentally, I feel like, okay, that wasn't nearly as good as I thought it was going to be. Now I want to get back on. So sometimes relaxing, having some good food and doing a whole lot of nothing for a short time period kind of resets you, almost like it reinvigorates you to want to get back to what you're doing. So I think going to the gym and eating the same foods and doing all this stuff can kind of get boring after a while, and it wears on you.
Yeah.
But then once you reset by deviating, then it's like, okay, I want to go back now. Your body kind of tells you that it's time.
Gotta get this train back on the tracks.
Yeah, for sure. So trading on my end, you and I talked before we started recording, as I'm hobbling over here to start to record. Well, let me backtrack first. So what I started doing is I started wrestling multiple times a week now. Because our wrestling team still trains. We have a lot of kids in other sports, so we don't have many there. But because we got a lot of kids, a couple kids playing baseball, a lot of kids doing track. Some are starting their, I don't want to call it off season because it's always the off season if it's not the in season, but gearing up for football, which kind of in the spring is when you really start to gear up because you have spring and then summer and then it's time. So we don't have a lot of kids there, but we have a smaller group that we're taking up the road about 45 minutes to a freestyle clinic. So it's at Austintown Fitch High School.
Right on.
And they're doing freestyle on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And we lift prior to them leaving. So what we do is we go in there, do a real thorough warm-up and some mobility and flexibility work. I don't want to call it conditioning. It's not really conditioning, but a little bit of running, and then we lift and then go up to freestyle. So what I've been doing is, prior to that, been wrestling with Cole McComas, Johnny McComas, our head coach, who we've had. He was actually our first guest we've ever had on the podcast. He's a Division I wrestler, 3-time state finalist, all Ohio wrestler. I mean, the best, or arguably the best wrestler that I've really ever been around.
Agreed.
And he's, training with me a couple times a week, working wrestling. We're just getting in there and rolling. And So what I've been doing is slowly, maybe not slow enough, slowly been coming back into like a more athletic type of training. So I'm still doing, my quote bodybuilding stuff. Like
Right.
that hasn't deviated at all. But I'm just kind of adding a little bit more of the go and not just the show type stuff. So at the end of our training session yesterday, Cole was like, "Hey, do you want to do some conditioning?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Let's go out to the turf and do sprints on the football field." And he's like, "All right, that's cool." So we go out there and, we're getting set and ready to go. And he goes, keep in mind, we're very, very thoroughly warmed. We were just wrestling for an hour and a half. So it's not like we didn't warm up properly or anything like that. I mean, we did all our stretching and flexibility work, and I've been rolling around in an 85-degree room for a long time.
Right.
So he says, "Do you want to race?" I said, "Well, to be honest, I don't know about going full tilt with these." I said, because the last time I sprinted was probably, 10 years ago, if not longer. I said, so I don't think that I can go into a full sprint. And he was like, "Oh, come on, let's race. So what we did was we did some sprints with like gradually adding intensity. So we started with 40s. And what we did was we did a couple 40s at like 25% of a sprint. So just like a jog. Then we did a couple 40s at like 50%, like what our perception of about 50%, like half speed would be. And then we did 75% sprints. So then we started doing some 40s at 100%. And, I surprisingly, believe it or not, I felt very, very fast. And a guy that I used to coach football with, one of my friends, Nick, was watching. He said, "Yeah." I said, "Dude, you look super fast." He's like, "I was surprised at how fast you look, considering you don't do this regularly." So I like kind of surprised myself. And then Cole wanted to do hundreds. And I said, "I don't know, dude. That's kind of getting past the threshold for me of distance that I feel comfortable exposing that hamstring to." Because, I mean, we're talking full 100% sprints
at 100 yards.
At 100 yards, which I know that's not far, but when your body's not used to doing it, that would be the equivalent to someone never lifting and putting 400 pounds on the bench press and saying, "Go do it." So I said, "I don't know, man." I said, "I'm going to pull my hamstring or tear my hamstring if I do this." And he kind of like, coaxed me and coerced me to do it. And the whole time I said, "I don't know, man." I said, "My hamstrings, I think I'm probably going to tear one of them." So we line up, we go probably about just past the 40-yard marker, probably about 40 or 50 yards, about halfway through, I felt it, and it just pops. So the pain was pretty bad, but what was worse is the feeling of the tissue actually popping and tearing. I mean, unfortunately, I had it with my tricep before, the upper part of my tricep, and if anybody's torn a muscle, and I mean, not like pull or tweak, I mean, actually, when you tear something, it's disgusting. Like
it sounds like
it sends chills across your body just like thinking of what that feeling's like, because they've had it before. And of course I crumble over and he's laughing at me thinking I'm joking around. I said, "No, dude, like I'm actually hurt right now. Like this isn't good." So went in, did the initial assessment, see if there's any like bruising yet, and test range of motion. And long story short, it's still attached. Like there's no like structural damage, at least from what I can feel or what I can see. It seems to function fine. Like I can still go into like knee flexion. What I can't do is like tie my shoes or like bend over to put my shoes on, because like I have to like lengthen and stretch the hamstring. So probably going to take a couple weeks off of doing anything too extensive.
Right.
Gym is going to be full upper body for now, obviously. I'm going to go 3 days. So today will be day 1. Sunday will be day 2, and Monday we'll do day 3. And then Tuesday morning, I'll kind of reassess where I'm at. Like if I think that it needs to get looked at by a specialist or what type of therapies I need to introduce or whatever. But so that's where I'm at. And I was thinking to myself, and I don't want to overstate, like it's just like a minor setback. Like it's nothing major. Like if this is the worst thing to happen to me, even in this month, this is a pretty darn good month that I'm going to have. So it's not really that big of a deal. But it was actually an eye-opener for me, and one of the best things to happen to me, I think, going forward, because of the fact that it shows me that my body needs to be a lot better than it is. And I hate when people say that I'm in shape because I look in shape. Like, and I have this discussion all the time with people where I'll say, man, I'm not in shape. And they're like, oh my gosh, you're so full of crap. Like, look, and I said, listen, there's a difference between looking in shape and being in shape and being in shape. And bodybuilding can at times lead you so far away from being what I would consider in shape, performance wise.
Right.
And, what I've done is every little bit adds up. Like, I've slacked on my diet a little bit. In the context of it hasn't been perfect. Even 95% is not good enough.
Right.
Like it has to be perfect, and that hasn't been happening lately. My sleep has been compromised a little bit because I'm getting up early and taking clients late, obviously, and I have not allowed myself a certain cutoff to get home and get my butt in bed and recover and go to sleep. And then just the simple fact that I don't train like an athlete anymore, and it's pretty bad that I've gotten to the point where I literally cannot run.
Yeah.
Like, I can't run without getting hurt.
That's how I am. Yeah.
And there's no excuse for that at our age.
Right.
Like, I understand that things happen as you get older, and like people were joking around with me about my hamstring about, oh, you're getting older, this is what's happening. And it's like, yeah, but my body should not be at that point when I'm 30, 31.
Right.
It should happen much
50.
later, significantly later than this, where I can't do these things. So it's eye-opening in the sense of I need to change things around.
Yeah, and
switch it up.
That's something that I was thinking about, and I've been thinking about it well before your injury, or even my injury was, well, probably not before my injury because I just kind of got started. But lately, especially, I've been thinking about it, and I think I want to start changing my working out to more of a functional fitness stuff. Like, obviously, I enjoy lifting weights, so I think I might change it down to where, like, go 3 days a week in the actual gym setting. But even the gym days, I want to add more functional stuff, and I need to do some more research and learn more on what makes sense to do functionally.
And I think that you need to, which I did not do, and there's all context here, but you need to take it slow because, like, with me, there are certain types of training that I do, and I do it 100%. So like me and like I've been doing a ton of mobility and flexibility work. So when you have this hamstring issue, you could potentially look at it and say, oh, this is really, just a product of you not paying close enough attention to range of motion and flexibility. Well, my hamstrings are very flexible. Like, I have no issues with, or haven't had any issues with them. And it's not like a mobility type of training because I do that stuff. What it is, it's a sheer force and load
right
under that length of tension or that length of time. That's a lot of tension on that hamstring to receive load and release, contract, stretch. It wasn't used to that stimulus. So it makes me think that I need to be a lot more varied with the stimulus that I expose my body to.
Yeah.
So like I was talking to like my training partners, and all of my training goes in cycles of probably like 4 months or so. I change it up once it starts to get stale progress wise, which for me seems to be about the 3 to 4, 5 month mark, somewhere in there. So what I'll do is I'll do a particular training style for several months. And then once I plateau, then I'll change the style. So last training cycle was probably over a year where it was like very low volume.
Yeah.
Like low volume, relatively heavy weights with proper execution, obviously, being the caveat there. But it was all heavy weight, low reps. What started happening was I started getting a lot stronger, and my technique was starting to, because I'm aiming for numbers, right? So now what we do is we scale back and we're doing a little bit higher reps with the only focus or the variable that we're focused on is mind-muscle connection. So reps are extremely slow. Weight is not high, not low, but appropriate, and focusing on contractions and squeezes and isometric holds on each rep and all that stuff. Well, I was talking about training partners, so the next thing that I want to do is transition into a phase where it is, I'll use what you said, functional fitness, where I have, some strength training components to it. Obviously, that's going to constitute the majority of it. Like, I will still be squatting and, pressing and deadlifting and doing all the things that I need to do to build as much muscle and strength as possible. But volume of that will go down, and some of that volume will be replaced with, jumping, sprinting, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So
that's the stuff I'm talking about.
I think that's those are things that I need to do just to get my body to perform optimally, because I've always been so interested in bodybuilding, but it's really been a product of being interested in how the body functions as a whole. It's not just the bodybuilding aspect. Like, bodybuilding was a way for me to display and show what I can do with the body, but I want to display and show that I could do other things with it as well. So I think that that's where my training will go. So
right. And I think that's right about where mine's going as well, because like I realized this time last year I was running like 3 to 5 miles every day.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, because this is, if I'm not mistaken, was your first 5K that you were getting ready for, which was canceled, but you did anyway.
For a triathlon. Yeah.
What did I say?
5K.
5K. Yeah, not 5K. Try. Your first triathlon, that was May?
Last week. It was supposed to be, in a couple weeks.
Okay.
But last year, a couple weeks from now. But,
so at this point,
canceled.
you were like full
Peak.
tilt.
I was in peak, yeah.
Ready to go.
Yep. We were like, I was a week out from my taper on my training, and then the coronavirus hit.
Yeah.
And everything started closing. And I was like, whew, I am not wasting all this time. So we made it work. I mean, we did it unofficially, but yeah, so I think I want to get back to that.
Mm-hmm.
But I really enjoy, and it's really just a matter of, I have to figure out how to blend it all up, because like I obviously can't with a newborn, and I don't want to be honest. I don't want to take that much time away from her. I can't do this 7 days a week, 2.5, 3 hours a day between strength training and cardio, and running and stuff.
And sometimes the functional side of things is a unique way for most people to blend those without, not even without adding time, but actually subtracting time.
Right. Because I can take her with me.
And you can do, strength training and conditioning. I know it sounds like a paradox, but you can kind of kill two birds with one stone to a degree. So if you're doing strength training specifically, or you're doing endurance training specifically, you're going to go in one of those two directions quickly. If you kind of try to blend them and do functionality type stuff, you'll get both directions, but it'll just be kind of a little bit slower.
Yeah.
But you'll be doing, like I said, the two birds with one stone type deal. So,
and I feel like you become a better, I like what you said there, athlete, if you kill both two birds with one stone.
Mm-hmm.
You take that bigger arc in the journey, you become a more well-rounded athlete, because it was patient. You were patient, and you didn't rush getting strong, or you didn't rush getting fast. You got strong and fast.
Well, one of the things that I always preach to my athletes is, GPP over SPP. So generalized physical preparation or generalized physical preparedness, we've talked about this before, is the foundation of athleticism. So jumping, sprinting, climbing, crawling, falling, grappling,
right?
Strength, all that stuff, flexibility, all the stuff that you need just to be an athlete in any sport. Like it crosses over between all sports. Like if you're faster and stronger, it's going to help you in every sport.
Right.
The SPP, the specific physical preparedness would be like the skills and traits that you need for a particular sport. I don't focus too much on that, or as much on that with my athletes, because I want them to be extremely holistically well-rounded.
Right.
So I need to start practicing what I preach and start making my body a little bit more well-rounded, because obviously I'm getting to the point where, I can't do those things anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
And I told you, it's all about what my training is. So like some days I'll train with my athletes, and it's the things that I like. So sometimes when we're doing jumping days, like any type of like our vertical plyometric work, like I can still jump pretty high, and that's because that's what I do with them.
Right.
But when we do our overspeed work, where we're doing like our distance sprints, so like anything over 20, 30, 40 yards, I don't do that with them. Well, now it's showing that I don't do that with them. So I think I just need to be a little bit more well-rounded with my training, and hopefully it kind of will make me better in the long run. Like I said, this was a blessing in disguise.
Yeah.
So
I'm glad that you have that ability to, a day out from a torn hamstring, be able to say it's a blessing in disguise, because heck, my just a regular minor pull. I mean, it was just a minor pull, but when you're 350 pounds, when you do it, minor is subjective, maybe.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's minor to me and severe to other people are different, because of my size. But my minor pull has set back almost a whole year.
Yeah.
Every time I try to start running again, because I feel good, like walking, and my cardio gets really up high, where I feel like my cardiovascular health's getting better and better and better. I'm like, okay, it's time to start running again.
Yep.
And I'll go and I'll stretch and I'll walk for a little bit, and then I'll go to try to jog, and then I'll pick it up and go a little faster, and then it's like, oof, I don't think it is. I think it's not time to run again. And it's like, I miss it because there's something to it. Runner's high is a real thing. So, yeah, I think that's the direction that I'm headed to, is more, holistically.
Yeah. All encompassing.
Yep.
Well, I think that kind of wraps up this episode, man. I guess we'll have to keep everybody posted and talk to them not only about injury progression, but also the progress of how our trading is going to adapt maybe a little bit kind of in the future.
Absolutely.
All right. So with that, we have come to the end of another episode of the Chasing Dreams podcast with Charlie and Justin. This has been episode 73. Wishing you guys a wonderful injury-free week, and hopefully we'll hear back from you next Saturday.
Unbreakable, unstoppable, I'm pushed to the edge and